A proportion is a statement that two fractions are equal. So the first step is to find out whether or not we have a proportion. So let's have a fraction, which is 2/5. And let's have another fraction, which is 3/7. Okay, if this is a proportion, what I need to have is the crisscross method, which says that this number times 7, this way from left to right, has to equal this number times the one on the right. So 2 times 7, is that the same as 3 times 5? On the left I have 14, on the right I have 15. That's not right. Therefore, this is not a proportion. Now let's have another one. I have 1/3 equals 2/6. Let's try. Is 1 times 6 the same as 2 times 3? In this case, I have 6. And on the right, I have 6 as well. And that means this is a proportion. Equals 4/10 is a proportion because it has a fraction on the left, a fraction on the right. And to check if that is a legitimate proportion, what you need to do is you need to multiply crisscross. In other words, you need to find out whether or not 2 times 10 is the same as, put a question mark, 4 times 5. And you get 20 on the left and 20 on the right. Therefore, 2/5 equals 4/10 is a proportion. Let's do another one. Is 2/4 equal 4/9 a proportion? So let's do the crisscross method one more time. You multiply 2 times 9. Is that the same as 4 times 4? On the left you have 18. On the right you have 16. That means this is not a proportion. Now, the second step is to write this formula per se in algebraic form. If you have a proportion which is A over B equals C over D, that means A times D equals B times C. Now we can actually solve proportions if we have an unknown. Let's denote N for the unknown. And let's try to solve a type of proportion. Let's say we have a proportion which is 3/10 equals N over 20. Using the crisscross method, I know that 3 times 20 has to be 10 times n. Now, by the multiplication property of equality, what you're allowed to do is, since this is multiplied in there, you're allowed to divide both sides by the number that's in front of n. And look what happens. These two will cancel out. You'll have 3 times 20 over 10. You can actually simplify with the fraction. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. That means n is 6. Let's do a little bit more complicated problem. Let's say I have 4 divided by n equals 10 divided by 3. With the crisscross method, I know that 3 times 4 equals 10 times n. What's in front of n? 10. So I divide both sides by 10. And these two will cancel out. Then I'll get n equals 3 times 4 over 10, 12 over 10, which is the same as 6 over 5. And you can leave it in the fraction form if you want. Okay, let's do another example where I have n at a different location. Let's say I have 3 over 10 equals n over 7. And the question is solve. You do the crisscross method. 3 times 7 equals 10 times n. And what's in front of n? 10. Divide both sides by that number. You have n equals 3 times 7, 21 over 10. You can either leave it like this or you can change it into a decimal if you want. It is up to you, and it's up to how the question is asked. So in this case, n was on the right hand side. Let's do another problem. Let's say I have 3 over 5 equals 7 over n. I use the crisscross method. 3 times n equals 5 times 7. What's in front of n? It is 3. So let's divide both sides by that number. So I have n equals 5 times 7, 35 over 3. You can leave it as that, or you can change it into a decimal. Now, in some cases, you may have a complex fraction, in other words, fraction of fractions, something like this. 3 over 2 over n equals 5 over 6. Oops. Let's do this one more time. Five over 6. Now, we do the crisscross method. You have 3 over 2 times 6 equals 5 times n. Now simplify as much as you can. This one is 6 divided by 2, that's 3. So 3 times 3, that's 9. 9 equals 5 times n. You can divide both sides by 5. So n equals 9/5. Or you can also write as 1.8. Either way will be acceptable. You don't have to have a complex fraction, fraction of fractions. You may also have decimals. Let's say 2.4 divided by 3.7 equals n over 8.1. That's not a problem. Let's do the crisscross method. 2.4 times 8.1 equals 3.7 times n. What do? What's in front of n? 3.7. You can divide both sides by 3.7. You can cross 3.7 out, and you'll have 2.4 times 8.1 divided by 3.7. You plug into your calculator or you do it by hand with decimal division, you'll get 5.25. Let's do a final the most complex one. You have fractions everywhere, and kind of pay attention. The principle is the same. 2 over 5 over 4 over 11 equals 3 over 7 divided by n. Let's do crisscross method. Oops. Sometimes the computer acts up. Let me erase this. I'm having a hard time. Let's try it. I'll erase this in a second. When you do the crisscross method, you'll get 2 over 5 times n equals 4 over 11 times 3 over 7. Now, on the left-hand side, you have a fraction multiplying. On the right-hand side, you have a multiplication of two fractions. All right. So let's do this problem. You have 3 times 4, 12 over 77 on the right hand side. On the left hand side you have 2/5 times n. What do you need to do? You need to divide both sides by 2/5. 2/5. These two will go away. Now I'm supposed to do division of two fractions, which is the same as 12 over 77 times 5 over 2. Look what you can do. You can do the 12 and 2. That will give you 6. You have 5 times 6. That's 30 divided by 77. You can actually leave it in that form.